Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight. This is a public briefing we're having this morning. We have witnesses, guests here to join us for a presentation from Aurora College on the Community Learning Centres. We're also joined by Minister Cleveland as well to give opening comments. As I said, this is a public briefing. We will be using our microphones, but they are controlled by our fine staff in the booth, so we don't have to worry about that. Please, for the members to direct your questions through the chair. We have about an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm going to ask, when we get to questions, we'll probably limit it to 5 minutes per member, just to ensure everyone gets an opportunity to ask questions. And if we can, please be as succinct as possible with our answers, so we can ensure that everyone gets an opportunity to ask questions. And with that, I'll start. What I'll do first is I'll go around the table and have the members introduce themselves, and then we'll go to the witness table. I'll start with MLA Testart.
Good morning, Kieran Testart. Good to see you all.
Good morning, Richard Ajirk. I'm MLA for Trinidad and Validity.
Good morning, Danny McNeely, MLA for the Snatu.
Good morning, George Nersu, MLA for the Mackenzie Delta.
Good morning, Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake and Yellowknife.
Good morning, folks. Welcome. My name is Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Great Slave.
Good morning. I'm Shauna Morgan, MLA for Yellowknife North.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Yakla. I'm member for Decho. Welcome.
And my name is Denny Rogers. I'm the MLA for Nuvik Boot Lake and chair of Accountability and Oversight Committee. So with that, members, we'll turn to Minister Cleveland first to maybe make introductions to Mr. Handley and Dr. James, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight for inviting us here today to speak in regards to the closure of the community learning centres and the proposed plans to modernize adult literacy and basic education in the Northwest Territories. As Minister responsible for the Aurora College Act, I am joined by James Fulford, Deputy Minister of the Department of Education, Culture and Employment, and my Ministerial Special Advisor, Nigel Woodrich. Under the Aurora College Act, the Board of Governors is responsible for the operational decisions ensuring an arm's length relationship between the college and the GNWT. While acknowledging our distinct roles, I maintain regular communication with Chairperson Handley, and there is ongoing dialogue between the Deputy Minister and Aurora College President, as well as between departmental and college staff. We work closely to identify shared priorities, highlighted by the recent approval of the Aurora College Mandate Agreement 2025-2028. For years, Aurora College has played a lead role in delivering adult literacy and basic education and enabling access to post-secondary and employment opportunities across the Northwest Territories. However, the college has confirmed that the historical model is both costly and not fully meeting the needs of adult students. I want to reiterate my message at Committee of the Whole last week. I recognize that the announced closure of the CLCs has been a shock to our small communities and across the Northwest Territories. I hear the concerns and recognize that people want to know what comes next for learners, for staff, and for access to education in our small communities and across the territory. My role and the role of my department is to ensure that if gaps remain in access to education in small communities, they are identified and addressed. ECE has a mandate to ensure residents have access to quality educational programs and supports. And that means working with Aurora College as well as other potential partners to deliver effective adult education in a way that truly meets the needs of learners. I am encouraged that Aurora College is actively examining alternative ways to support learners, and I know that members want to see those plans. Today's briefing is an important step in that discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. I'll now turn it over to Chairperson Mr. Joe Handley of Aurora College to make introductions and opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to the members. We appreciate your interest in Aurora College. I'm Joe Handley, Chairperson of the Board of Governors, and joining me are the President of Aurora College, Dr. Angela James, and the Vice President, somewhere, the Vice President of Communities and Extensions, Dr. Heather McKeag-Nystrom. I'd like to make very brief introductory comments as a background for our presentation today. Dr. James will then do a brief presentation responding to the 5 questions provided earlier by your committee. We will then answer questions from the Standing Committee members. The Board of Governors was set in place in March 2023 with the responsibility for, and I quote, developing policies for Aurora College respecting the administration, operations, programs, and priorities of the college as set out in the Aurora College Act and regulations and other directives. The Board of Governors held its first meeting in June 2023. While not selected on a regional basis, the board is appointed by the minister and is composed of 10 members, half of whom are Indigenous, on 3-year terms, the student representative, selected by the student body for a 1-year term, and 2 representatives of the academic and non-academic staff, each for 2 years. At the first meeting or orientation session in June 2023, the board was briefed on all major aspects of Aurora College. At this initial meeting, the board was concerned to find that the community learning centers enrollment had dropped to only 22 students, full-time students, attending classes in 19 community learning centers. 10 communities had no CLC, no community learning center, and the budget for the 19 centers was almost $7 million annually. As well, in 2010, the federal government ceased to provide artist support for students, and that's funding for cost of living, basically. They created the ISET program. We can talk about it later if you want to. But given the very high cost of sustaining only some communities on the CLC model, and given very clear direction from the GNWT to provide with steps and costs in establishing an Aurora College Polytechnic and fiscal sustainability directions, the CLC model was no longer affordable. A new approach to adult learning equally available to all NWT residents was needed. The Board of Governors was unanimous in its decision to have a new and more affordable replacement for the old CLC approach. I will now ask Dr. James to respond to the 5 questions provided to our committee. So, Angela.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Dr. James.
Sani John Helthita, Dynasty Sani Due. Angela's Sule, Huli Dr. Angela James Dasuche, Aurora College President, Huli Ke Galasnade, Uvlami, Dwingwinzi, Nakale, Sigadagonti, Etlanadea, Kabidanizon, Commodon. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for inviting Aurora College to speak at the table on a very important topic that is near and dear to all our hearts, that being adult education, adult learners, who are the parents of children in our families in the Northwest Territories communities. I want you to know that Aurora College and the Board of Governors have listened very carefully to your questions, your comments, and your ideas. They are important to us. We have used your questions that you sent earlier to us to organize this presentation that outlines Aurora College's go-forward plan for adult and post-secondary education in the Northwest Territories. The title of the presentation is Modernizing Adult Upgrading in the NWT. Please know also that the content of this presentation has been endorsed by the Board of Governors, and I ask members please to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. It's about 12 minutes. I timed it, trying to be respectful of time. As such, I will begin with question number 1. So I got to do the, someone's doing the clicking for me. Great. Question number 1, how and why was the decision made to close the community learning centers? So over the past 10 to 15 years, community learning centers have become increasingly problematic with low enrollment, high cost, especially top-heavy in its regional administration, and being out of scope of Aurora College's purpose to provide adult upgrading. So CLCs continue not to meet the needs of learners and communities. And so due to the low enrollment and the high cost and the unsustainable nature, Aurora College can no longer afford to operate a system that is prohibitively expensive, ineffective, and outdated. As well, next slide. Do I do that? Oh, someone's going to do that for me. Next slide, please. What's happening? And as well, not only the unsustainable nature of the CLCs, but we are in a climate of financial restraint, not only across the Northwest Territories, but with GNWT's financial sustainability plan just this year, really placed hardships on a lot of all departments. Aurora College itself took a $1.85 million cut in funding this year, and in anticipation of possibly further cuts in the upcoming year, Aurora College really had to make some tough decisions related to the high cost of the CLCs. So Aurora College decided that the bricks and mortar, the buildings approach of delivering on-site, face-to-face adult upgrading of the 19 CLCs will stop as of June 30th. Question number 2. What does it mean by modernizing adult upgrading and resolving ongoing issues of low enrollment? So Aurora College's go-forward plan is to move into the 21st century, learning with modernized, more effective adult upgrading model. The redesign for upgrading plan will be delivered at Aurora College's 3 campuses, in addition to a delivery model with wraparound supports connecting learners in all 33 NWT communities. So by increasing the upgrading to the 33 communities, Aurora College aims to reach more adult learners, particularly Indigenous students who make up the majority of the NWT population. Aurora, next slide, please. Aurora College, of course, has already established success with its online learning programs, showing a lot of really positive results. For example, in our personal support worker program that started in 2020, there's about 34 community-based students who have graduated online, and currently there's 19 students all up and down the valley, right up in Paultech, Sachs Harbor, right down into Fort Goodhub, Fort Liard, and then down into Hay River, as well as Fort Smith. All of these 19 students are working online. In addition, with our early learning and childcare program since 2021, there's been approximately 63 graduates that have completed their diplomas online. So you can see many positive results for online learning. And currently, the data has also shown that majority of the students who register and complete these programs are Indigenous women who are very capable of handling their course load online. So the modernized approach will have students access the online wraparound supports to increase successful course completion. And these wraparounds include such things as access to technology for new and rebuilt computers, headsets, microphones, the applicable software. There will also be support for learners, including the onboarding tech course, really to ensure student success. As well, the wraparound services continue, such as what will happen is we'll have additional IT support, especially to provide, these will be new positions to provide the tech support. It should be the tech support, especially for those aspects of facing challenges and troubleshooting. I think it should be the next slide. Dedicated online staff to expand the delivery options into communities to ensure that we have subject matter expertise. As well, we'll develop a 1-800 support line with online counselors, wellness staff, tutors to support the expanded delivery. Mentors will also be available to provide coaching, regular check-ins, and regular networking activities with students as well. And really exciting is plans are underway to initiate regional cohorts of upgrading students to gather on an annual basis at one of the 3 colleges. And so when they do come together, they'll showcase their project-based learning. In addition, they'll participate in campus-based activities such as experiential labs, campus tours, and exposure to tours to trades and tourism. And so essentially, the modernized approach will be about for adult education, adult upgrading in the NWT is all about increasing the reach to the 33 communities, increasing the effectiveness of the adult upgrading programs with specialized instructors and support, as well as increasing the retention and the success of the students through the wraparound services that will be available. Aurora College is well underway in advancing a modernized and restructured and more cost-effective upgrading program in NWT communities. Question number 3, so what does that mean as the impacts on staff? So with the upcoming closures, we will reduce the number of indeterminate term positions, expected right now at approximately 31 employees, and the college will formally notify these employees on or after March 20th. But currently, Aurora College is also working with Human Resources to advance the GNWT staff retention policy, really to make sure that there's one-on-one support to staff who will be impacted to ensure the best plan forward for these employees, possibly being retained by Aurora College or transferred to the GNWT Public Service. What are the impacts to students? Well, again, as I said, Aurora College is entering into the 21st century by strengthening, enhancing, and promoting online distance education, learning into 33 communities for the future students who require adult upgrading. So with this paradigm shift, which is on its way, it'll be for, of course, online learning, but it'll start to be a regular part of business for all students, both for online learning as well as online upgrading, as well as for other current and future programs at Aurora College. So Aurora College's modernized approach for adult upgrading will begin this academic year, 25-26. We're looking forward to it. So the fourth question is, what are the cost savings from the CLC closures? So currently they surround the CLC positions. All total, there's 45 CLC positions, which shows the high number of positions as well as the high costs for these PYs, in addition to the O&M costs, the leases, and the maintenance costs to run these buildings, to the tune of $6.67 million. So that's part of the savings. ECE also collaborates with Aurora College with a MOU for ALBE, Adult Basic Literacy and Education, and this includes a $1.6 million for ALBE. Discussions are underway with ECE, will be undertaken to explore the reprofiling of these funds with the desire to see the cost savings. This will be dependent on any additional supports that are seen as necessary to provide education and training with communities to fill any gaps that might be left as a result of the closures. So the estimated savings is approximately $8.29 million. Question number 5 is, what will be the next steps that Aurora College is planning to take in terms of the implementation? And so the implementation is threefold, as you see on this slide, and it'll be implementing these major initiatives. I'll go in more detail on these 3 items in the charts that come in the final 3 slides. Next slide. So the first part of the implementation plan will be implementing the GNWT staff retention policy. Once again, that will be our first goal, is to make sure that the affected employees have one-on-one support with the best laid plan forward for them that might involve transferring to Aurora College or to the GNWT workforce. However, there may be some employees who select early retirement or a severance package, and so those estimated costs are about $1.5 million. That's implementation plan part number 1. The second part of our implementation plan will be to implement Aurora College's modernizing and restructuring adult upgrading program. So the reinvestment will be made back into Aurora College ALBE upgrading program, which includes hiring 6 positions. These are qualified specialty instructors to implement the upgrading options, as well as hiring 3 qualified online program coordinators. These will be the coordinators that provide the very important one-on-one support moving ahead, regular check-ins, coaching, mentoring, as well as hiring the IT support that's necessary, the wraparound support, including the 1-800 support line, the tech equipment, and the online learning platforms, as well as the regional cohort gatherings. The estimated costs here are $2.21 million. And finally, the last part of the implementation plan is implementing our very important Aurora College mandate, all the mandate items in our 25-28 mandate agreement, And this will involve the delivery costs for our general studies program, for the evaluation cost for the quality assurance process, and a very important unit that we need at Aurora College is called the Centre for Learning and Teaching Innovation. That's really the heart of any educational institute where you have your program design, your curriculum development, your assessment strategy, as well as your Indigenous perspectives, making sure that you're indigenizing all throughout the Aurora College, as well as the program delivery costs of our early childhood and early childhood development program, and then of course our really exciting reinstatement of the Bachelor of Education and the Bachelor of Social Work degrees. As well, our Made in the North degree, which is just on deck, it's just been approved by the Board of Governors, still has to go through quality assurance processes, which will be ongoing. But I'd like to announce that our new Made in the North degree will be a Bachelor of Business Administration with an Indigenous leadership focus. So really exciting for learners across the Northwest Territories, especially Indigenous learners. As well, we are in the preliminary talks. Federal funding is still underway for a dental therapy program that is at the Aurora campus in Inuvik. Then we're working with one of the Indigenous languages. This is one that's really exciting for me in terms of developing a language program that will be the foundation for Aurora College's development of an Indigenous language diploma and degree program. As well, we have a big application that's gone into CanNor. That's a federal agency for the expansion of our EL, Early Learning and Childcare program, which really focuses on distance education into the communities, and that will start the ongoing development of our e-learning strategy, which will be very important not only for the upgrading program, the online upgrading program, but for all online programs. So very exciting. As well, in your package, you received a little handout that looks like this. And on it, if we go to the next slide, it's just celebrating the new things that are happening at Aurora College in the upcoming year. Very exciting is our pathway to the Bachelor of Education, Bachelor of Social Work. We have our General Studies program, which will be launching in fall of 2025. It'll be a hybrid model, taking place in person in Fort Smith, as well as online to the 33 communities. And as well, we'll move ahead with our practical nursing diploma program, our personal support worker diploma. All of these, of course, are with online options, as well as the many, many great things that are happening in the trades and apprenticeship with new programs and new levels. And then our expanded distance and part-time options for our early learning program and childcare and our business and office admin. So as you can see, lots of great things happening at Aurora College already in our go-forward plan for modernizing the upgrading program, but currently what's going to be happening this year as well into the future. At this time, Marcy Masicho Kwainani, and it's time for the questions.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. James. We certainly appreciate that update. I'm going to now turn it over to committee for questions. And again, just to remind committee, I'm going to allocate 5 minutes, and I will gently remind everyone if that time is up with my nifty timing device I have here, and hopefully we can all get some time in to ask some questions. So, floor is open. Who would like to go first? Ms. Yakalaya, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. The question I have is about the assets in the communities. What will happen to the buildings? I know some are owned by the communities, but some are owned by or run by Aurora College. What will happen to those assets in the community? I have one in Katlodichi that's on the reserve. I want to know what's going to happen to that. Thank you.
So, all of these assets. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
You'll have to go through, apologies, you have to go through the chair, and then I'll recognize, just so we can ensure that we're getting our folks in the booth. Dr. James.
I'll start again. Almost all of these facilities, these buildings are GNWT owned assets. And so we'll be going through the process of asset management and the transfer of these buildings back over to GNWT. And so I believe that there's quite a number of requests that are coming forward to the GNWT and also to Aurora College about how we could potentially access these buildings. And so that'll be part of the ongoing talks and discussion on how these kinds of how these buildings can serve be a service to the community. You know, in the ledge, I heard a lot about activities such as health and wellness activities and traditional knowledge activities and cultural activities, as well as language activities, which are all very, very worthwhile activities. And these are a lot of the activities that are taking place in the community learning centers, which is not really the purpose for the community learning centers, which is to provide adult upgrading that leads to post-secondary, and so thus the change towards the modernized approach. So if indeed communities want to talk with the owners of the buildings, that's certainly, I certainly invite you to do that.
Thank you, Dr. James. Ms. Shakalaya.
So, you did say, well, are you working with the indigenous governments to take over possibly the community learning centers? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shakalaya. Dr. James. Or Minister Cleveland, sorry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So within the Department of Infrastructure, the facilities that are owned by the GNWT, the Department of Infrastructure does have a process that they go through for assets that are no longer in use. We have had a tremendous amount of outreach from different communities who have different plans for how they would like to see those facilities used. And so we're going to work through the process with the Department of Infrastructure and of course speaking with community governments as to how they'd like to see them used. It's everything from, for example, some are already currently being used for classroom space for the JK to 12 system, and we'll need to continue to honor that in some of those instances. Some people have indicated a desire for example, shelter spaces or other community uses, and so certainly working with communities is a top priority in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Ms. Shakalaya.
For the online learning in the communities, what of students that don't have the capability, or they don't have the internet, or they don't have the equipment needed to do their studies? If they don't have it at home, is there a place designated in the communities where these students can go? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Shakalaya. This will go to Dr. James.
Yes, and that's part of the whole plan, is that not only identifying those students and what their needs are, which will come largely from us going into the communities as we put together the 1-800 support line, as well as the communication that will be happening with communities to make sure that if there's any tech needs that are needed, that we'll identify them, and that we'll make sure that there are new and used computers. There'll be headsets and speakers and maybe even turbo sticks. So whatever the needs are, we'll try to we will fulfill that for the students who don't have those pieces of equipment.
Thank you, Dr. James. Ms. Shakalaya.
Okay. My last question. There's lots of questions. We all have questions. So, what is the future of community learning centers in the north? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shakalaya. Dr. James.
As a result of a unanimous decision made by the Board of Governors, they will close on June 30th of 2025.
Thank you. Next on my list, I have Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to everyone for being here today, including our full audience, which we don't usually have. You've talked about how you're going to replace the function of community learning centers with other ways online for students to do upgrading. And so you've sort of characterized it as that CLCs were simply about upgrading and you're just going to do it a different way. My understanding is that community learning centers were about much more than simply upgrading. My understanding is that they were started as independent centers run by Frontier College back in the 60s and 70s. And the idea or the vision was that it was to be about community development, right? So reaching people in different ways who want to learn, but also, empowering people and empowering communities. But I see that, like, over time, under Aurora College, it's turned more and more into, okay, we're going to supply you with essentially English teachers and offer courses between 9 to 5 for anyone who's available between or 9 and 4. And so, a narrower selection of community members could really take advantage or access these things. And now it sounds like we're replacing, the English teachers with online robots. I'm not sure, just whatever provides online courses. So I guess my first question is your understanding that the community learning centers were simply about upgrading? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Dr. James,
The,
or, sorry,
Joe, yep.
Mr. Handley.
Thank you. Yeah, they had a beginning 30 years ago, and I'm not sure what extent Frontier College are leading that, but they had a community development focus. Over the years, interest in those things seems to have waned, and they became more and more upgrading centers. So right now, as they are today, they're basically upgrading. They're not doing a lot of others. Anything else they're doing might be organized by someone in the community. It could be anything from sewing circles to some short-term training that's brought in. The federal government used to be involved directly with the college, but since 2010, they've become more involved through the band councils. There's no direct support for other NWT residents or Métis, for example, unless the band chose to spend their money that way.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So definitely the question pops to mind. It sounds like the Aurora College wants to spend additional money on tech support, these online courses in, supplying computers. Why do we need Aurora College to do those things? I mean, there's lots of other opportunities. If people just want to take online courses, they could take them from somewhere else. They can get tech support from somewhere else. Why do you think that Aurora College should be the ones to spend, GNWT money on developing these different online courses or doing that kind of tech support when it's available elsewhere? Why is Aurora College the best place to do that at this point? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mr. Handley.
Thank you. Yeah, there are still people in the communities who want to take job training, and that's a role that Aurora College will certainly continue to have responsibility. When it comes to other kinds of training, there's lots of agencies out there who are providing that right now. There are lots of students, in fact there are more students taking online training and courses from agencies other than the college. So we don't have to be there, if I put it crudely, except for the job training being the main drive that we're interested in. And governments always operate in silos, as you know, and our piece is basically the upgrading that leads to jobs. The federal government have changed their way of funding to try to include the band councils more into it with a role in it. So assistance from them goes through the band council, not through us. So we want to quietly back away from that, but continue with our responsibility primarily around job training.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Next on the list, I have Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have several questions, but I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible because I know our time is limited. So it's my understanding that CLC staff and communities had heard from their communities residents that the offerings were limited, and that was why enrollment was low. So I see what you're trying to do here to address that problem in a fashion. Not sure I'm 100% in agreement with how you're addressing it, but why? My question would be, if you only offer limited courses, enrollment will stagnate. So why would you do this abruptly and without community input. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. Mr. Handley.
Since 2022, the college, as it does every year, has had consultation sessions. In 22-23, we held 16 sessions with staff, with students, with public, with other stakeholders. In 23-24, we had 21 sessions. Some of them, people didn't show up at all, so there wasn't much interest in them. But I guess sometimes you have to have an issue in order for people to come out to a meeting, and that's sort of what's happened here. So the word has been out that this is a concern, certainly from this Board of Governors. We became very aware of it in our first orientation session, that something's wrong here. If we're only offering programs in 19 communities, we only have 22 students all across the north. We've got 10 communities that have nothing. So we have to move ahead with a new model.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Ms. Reid.
Thank you for that. So, receiving your presentation today, I do know bricks and mortar is expensive, but what I'm curious about what we lose when we go online. So, in my family, I have a stepmother-in-law who was a dean at a school in another jurisdiction that was offerings mostly online. But those offerings were supplemented by not annual gatherings, but rather multiple times where you meet and you take courses in person as well as online. Because as we've all seen through COVID, there are really limitations to doing solely online programs. I can't imagine that it would translate for folks who are used to having in-person sessions or communities that meet in person and gather in person and then going 100% online with just one meeting per year. What is the rationale behind that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. Mr. Handley, over to Dr. James.
Thank you for that question. And so we're finding at Aurora College that the learning profile is changing, is that more and more, especially a lot of the high school students who are familiar with the Northern Distance Learning Program, which is an online program that reaches many communities in the Northwest Territories, and they're becoming more comfortable, of course, with the online learning. And so that's why the online learning is part of the modernized approach. We'll also be offering upgrading, of course, at our 3 campuses. And if people choose to stay in their communities, in these 33 communities, they can choose the online upgrading option. And so essentially it is working toward with all of the wraparounds that allow us to, rather than wait in buildings for people to come to us, to go to the communities. And so we're flipping the model per se. And in that way, having the options of the wraparound to make sure that they are really connected, like if they have questions or there's troubleshooting or there's challenges, to have that one-on-one support with the tutors or the wellness person or the mentors, and then clear that forward and have them move forward with their online learning. But as well, what will happen is we're in the process of having all of those, if they choose the online upgrading model, there'll be the online cohort, and we hope to bring them together at the end of each of the academic year to go to the campus and to see how is it that the campus runs with campus run tours and experiential camps and exposure to the trades and the apprenticeship programs. So it'll be a little bit of both for the online, not only online but also being brought together in person.
Thank you. One brief one, Ms. Reid.
To measure the success of this change, I want to understand if you have any monitoring and evaluation frameworks that are currently being built out, and what benchmarks of success do you want to reach with this approach, and timelines around that. Is that work that's underway? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Reid. Dr. James.
So we will begin collecting that data in terms of the number of, we kind of are already collecting the data with our other programs, with the personal support worker as well as the early childhood and learning program, by setting benchmarks in place for their completion, as well as making sure that they are supported as they're doing the online learning. So a lot of positive results in that area. And so the learning that we've had from our current online programming is what we'll use in terms of collecting data and benchmarks for the success of the online modernized approach to upgrading in the upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you, Dr. James. Next on my list, I have Mr. Nirsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. First of all, I'd like to, the community learning centers are made up of students, staff, and especially it reflects the communities. And in your presentation, you used the word problematic. So to me, you're saying the staff, the students, and especially the communities are problematic to you. I take that's how I take it. It's a very strong word. I just wanted to get that off. In reflecting with the whole process, it seems the cuts to the community learning centers has been on the books since the Board of Governors and Department of Education, Culture, and Employment started working on the mandate letter without any consultation with the affected communities. Nobody, not even us, we didn't even know. It came as a shock to us, and I can't imagine how the communities felt, potential students. Can you please confirm when you and the department started talking about cuts to these community learning centers? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nirsu. Mr. Handley.
Well, it started at the first meeting of the Board of Governors in June 2023, when we realized that there's only 21 students at that time who are benefiting from the learning centers, and that 10 communities had nothing. They had no center at all, or no programs. So some had a closed building. So we knew from that point on, and we've had a lot of discussions. We asked staff at the college to work out some options for us. And they did that, came back, but it was too much the same thing. It's just more of what we're already doing, and we couldn't see expanding it to all communities within the budget limits we have. So we had to look at it again, and that was in June when we made a decision, June 2024. But look, we got to do this differently, because this costed way too much money. And it's going to cost even more if we make it available to everybody in every community. So since that time, we've been working on it, and certainly as part of our mandate discussions.
Thank you. Mr. Nirsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's graduates from Arcadia 11th School in Northwest Territories are not ready for any post-secondary school, nothing at all, maybe just a select few. I brought this up numerous times. Our students are unable to leave the communities because they're they're not ready. I've witnessed this. I went to Adult Ed just to get some refresher, and I've witnessed graduates at the blackboard having problems with simple multiplication, and they've received a diploma. You're taking another option away from these individuals, having them go online and trying to do another form of education, doing it online, navigating through computers. I experienced this during COVID when I was taking business, first year of business. We had to go through online learning, and that's a big shock. It was a big shock to me because I had to navigate through the computers, through these sites I didn't even know. And how will you address this issue with trying to get someone who's not even ready to go to a post-secondary education program and have them learn online? How will you address that issue? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nursu. Mr. Hadley.
The college has had a lot of discussions with the K-12 system because under an ideal system, grade 12 graduates would come out as grade 12 and be ready to do it. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So we had a lot of good discussions. We are working with education. There are programs that are offered through the high schools as well, whether it's the Phoenix program out of Fort Smith or Northern Distance Learning. So we're working with them. The world is going digital, and I think we have to recognize that and prepare our people to be able to succeed, whether it's getting a driver's license or taking a course to qualify for job training or whatever. Digital is part of our world, and it's not always going to be bricks and mortar. It's going to be in that direction. Dr. James mentioned a lot of support systems we have in the college that we're proposing to have that'll help students to be able to succeed and become familiar with the computerized world.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Dr. James.
Respond to the question is that the K-12 system has a new support system as well through the career education advisors, and so that is Aurora College will be working with these individuals that are situated all throughout the Northwest Territories to see that the transition from high school into whether it be upgrading or right into the post-secondary world will be smoother, especially as it has to do with being more comfortable with online learning and technology, to make sure that whatever is that wherever the needs are, that we make sure that there's that one-on-one conversations with the learners to make sure that their path forward is without trouble and without chagrin and problems, because it's people are not the problems. It's usually the programs or the delivery mode or the costing or things like that. And so with the career education advisors, we hope to help that transition into wherever the high school students wish to go. And if they do have issues in terms of their learning, that we work those out and have a good learning plan moving forward. Marcy.
Thank you, Dr. James. Next, I have Mr. McNeely. Check on second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, and thanks for sharing your presentation. I too feel similar to my colleague in Mackenzie Delta, and I'm looking at that word problematic. I'd be scared to go downtown Fort Good Hope and say you're a problem. And to be open and honest with you, I don't agree. I'm still accepting, but I don't agree with this decision made. That's the honest truth. When I heard that, I did my research. I went to the individuals. What's happening? What do you think? So it seems to me that the design of the outcome was instrumentally designed, placing restrictions on the abilities of the regional offices to do their job. And I guess my first question is, you're measuring the outcomes because only 22 students are attending classes. Which communities are these 22 students from? My first question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. The question will go to Mr. Handley.
Now, the attendance that we have right now is KFN is one, Elo Data is another, and Fort Good Hope, probably the most successful one in terms of using the CLCs, and Fort McPherson are the 22 students who attend classes full-time at the community learning centers.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the success of some communities are pretty much the weaknesses of others and at the mercy of others. So measuring all 19 centers by several or a small bunch of success attendance, and even the attendance, you look at the numbers, 1. So how can we shut that down? And if Good Hope is a success on the top of the list, why aren't we keeping it going? So Toledo is at the mercy of somebody else doing good. Maybe those are just red flags that should be made available to say, okay, what can we do to improve attendance? I recall last spring, Mr. Chair, when you made a presentation talking about 8 students in a $40 million campus in Inuvik, when 5 out of 8 were upgrading and the other 3 were taking trades. So I really thought at the time, okay, well, if that's noticeable on the weaknesses of providing education, there must be a movement towards increasing that. And if the world is going digital, why don't we bring digital to the small communities? There's really need for education in general. I'm a big fan of the trades initiatives. And just to measure my success in promoting trades, I secured contributions or help lobby contributions for 2 initiatives in training for a total of $12,000 by industry. And when I told them about the initiative of the Nortran, which is a name I gave this initiative, short for North Training. And I did up a discussion paper, my own briefing, and shared that with some of the industry players, and they said, yes, here, we'll give you a donation of $7,000. We're still having ongoing discussions, but could have Arctic College do that in preparation for the remedial opportunities from industry, guardianship initiative, and the emerging industries that are coming up, such as reclamation? We have to target our education plan to meet the demand for employment, getting our workforce ready. And I really think if we had this room discussion downtown Toledo or Delaney or Norman Wells or Fort Good Hope, I really think we'll be surprised at the amount of support for education. And reorganizing and strengthening our community learning centers. That's our presence in the community. The high school students are in a separate building. But sharing readiness, and if you took Nortran as a discussion paper and tell the leaders, this is why we're targeting and supporting education, to design it and train a workforce in preparation for that emerging opportunity. Okay, well, I'm going to give you an observe of you made a decision last spring in June, and there was an operational plan submitted by your staff in August for an operational plan for the community learning centers. It never went anyplace. Here was a document to design, the efforts put back into it. And supporting that was your community market labor plans. I got 2 copies from 2 communities. So I think those are just tools in the toolbox to help you design an existing system that's going to produce positive outcomes and training. So are you familiar with the operational plan that was drafted in last August 2024? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Mr. Handley?
Yes, I'm familiar with it, and probably have more to learn about it, but it's a good initiative. And the other thing I'll say is that it seems that a lot of the success of adult learning is based first on the student, but second on the instructor. And unless you have an instructor who is ready and willing to be creative and make these things work, as you did in your case with the Nortran, then it won't work. If the instructor sees their job just to sit in a classroom and wait for somebody to walk in the door. And unfortunately, while we're making that transition over to the digital age, we're still dragging along on the old bricks and mortar approach. So we want to force that to move ahead, and Dr. James has mentioned a lot of initiatives we're undertaking to help support it so that there's more success stories. Fort Good Hope has probably a very creative, I don't know the person, probably a very creative adult educator who's ready to work with you. But other communities, no response. So we're struggling with that, and it's very expensive to operate bricks and mortar. We think we can do it better. We can also move the communities to the digital age and come out with a better education system that we have now.
Thank you, Mr. Handley. Next I have Mr. Jericho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the Board of Governors and the Minister being here. This issue is a very sensitive issue, as you know. When it first came out, as the MLA for my riding, I was caught off guard and surprised, and only to learn that we found out through cabin radio, and we were never consulted on what happened. But I just want to come back and point out that you know, I always remind my colleagues, and when I took an oath of this office, that I swear to uphold and protect the treaties. And I got a treaty document here, and I carried this around for a reason. And I mentioned this to the Minister of Education as well, that in our treaty it talks about education being a treaty right. And the way government gives money to the territorial government, it's through grants and contributions. Approximately $1.8 billion we get from Government Canada. And when it comes here, we're doing the Crown Council. I mean, we're doing the Crown duties and fiduciary obligations. So when we do it, it goes to Aurora College as well. So I just want to know, I guess my question to you would be is that, does the college recognize and uphold Treaty 8 and Treaty 11 and modern treaties on education? I just want to know, when you do your planning, do you guys take that into consideration? Thank you.
Mr. Jericho. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. From the perspective of the GNWT, we absolutely and certainly honor historical treaty rights, and also through the implementation of modern treaties as well. And, you know, as time goes on and as relationships have changed, certainly Indigenous governments and the government of the Northwest Territories work very differently and work in unison and together, and figuring out, you know, what does, for example, the delivery of education look like in communities. And, you know, through an example of the work we're doing on the modernization of the Education Act, it continues to evolve and will continue to evolve. And I think it's imperative that we work closely together on what the delivery of education looks like. And I mean, you know, if we look 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't have the same type of northern distance learning that we have today. We didn't have the same types of, you know, I look at even when I was in high school versus now, the offerings of different courses, and now we have courses that are being, and in curriculums that are being adapted for the Northwest Territories in a really special way. And so I think it's important that those relationships continue to evolve. and that they stay current and they stay creative, and at the end of the day, most importantly, they stay unified. I don't know if Deputy Minister Fulford, is there anything you'd like to add as well?
Deputy Minister Fulford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing much to add, but just that the department takes very seriously its responsibility in all areas of education and is aware of the treaties and the modern treaties that set out a new relationship between the GNWT, the federal government, and Indigenous governments when it comes to the education sphere, including lawmaking powers for Indigenous governments in some cases in these areas. So it is, as the Minister said, an evolving space, and we take our obligations very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Fulford. Mr. Jericon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. In dealing with my former colleagues from the 19th Assembly, it has been brought to my attention even back then that when our students graduate from high school, they're usually 2 or 3 grades behind, and that's concerning. And here we are today. We're still dealing with that same issue here in the 20th Assembly, and in particular in small communities. We have students that graduate, but they don't have their actual grade 12, but they may be grade 9 or grade 10. But when they go home in their small community, they rely on these adult learning centers to get their grades up to a standard to get into colleges and universities. But right now, shutting them down doesn't help. And the other thing is, and when you talk about online learning, not everybody's got computers, not everybody's got internet in small communities. So I'm not sure how, yet I like one of my colleagues said that, well, the digital world it's coming, but the thing is, well, let's bring it to the small communities. So I'm not sure how you're going to address that, but I have one more follow-up question after that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we have time, Mr. Jericon. I'll put you on for the next list as well. Dr. James.
So just to add on to, I just want to go back on the treaty rights. Just understand that Aurora College as well has a new tricameral governance structure with our Board of Governors, Academic Council, but also our Indigenous Knowledge Holders Councils. And our Indigenous Knowledge Holder Council are just writing their legislative framework. And this will ensure that the Truth and Reconciliation calls to actions, the UNDRIP articles, as well as the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women recommendations will be informing the indigenization and the move towards reconciliation at Aurora College, including, of course, the respect and the honoring of the treaty rights at the college. So I just wanted to say something about that. But as well, regarding online learning, Aurora College is already experiencing a lot of positive success with online learning. As I described to you, we have right now in our personal support worker, there's 19 communities that have students who are being very successful in their learning and connecting with their instructors, and they're being supported not only through the specialized instructors, but also with these wraparound services that we're talking about. And what we'll do with the upgrading is to make sure that those learners that need one-on-one support and regular check-ins and coaching and also tech equipment, that those will be available to make sure that their success is guaranteed. RC.
Next I have Mr. Testart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much was the total cost of operating the CLC adult education program? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Mr. James or Mr. Handley.
The CLCs were costing $6.7 million annually.
Thank you. Mr. Testart.
Thank you. So you've got, if I'm reading your slides correctly, 2.21 million is the projected cost of the new program. So that's going forward. So the remainder of that amount that you're saving, where is that money going? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Ms. James. Dr. James.
Aurora College's plan moving forward is to make sure that we balance the investments. Again, the total that we're expecting is 8.29 million. And of course, we have to make sure that we follow the staff retention policy. And then the remaining will be balanced between the modernized approach to upgrading, which is, as I'm saying in my slides, 2.1, but also to balance that in terms of moving ahead on our mandate items. And so that total was 4.58. And so that will be, when we're fulfilling our mandate items, those are all of the general studies program, the Bachelor of Education, Bachelor of Social Work, the new Made the North, our curriculum development unit and things like this. And so there will be a balanced approach to the two, our upgrading model as well as our degrees and our diplomas and certificates that will be part of the Polytechnique. Marcy.
Thank you, Dr. James. And Mr. Testart.
Thank you. So just for the record, this is was not my understanding of how the financial arrangement would go, that the money taken from this program would go back to the GNWT for adult education and potentially supporting whatever happens next to the CLCs. Now, on the CLC, so I have been told that over the past 2 years, one CLC alone has had an I-STEP program run twice in the fall of 2023 and in the fall of 2024. The BEAR program, a Class 7 training program with 22 intakes, a Class 3 training prep program with 2 intakes around a brand new truck, a small systems water treatment plant operator Math 2 program, 28 intakes, full wait list for 2 intakes currently for this fiscal year for small vessel operator training. That's 24 students, 36 students if there's a third intake. So that's over 100 students successfully completing in-person training over the past 18 months. So that sounds very different from what you presented in your presentation. So we're getting this from students and from instructors as well. What's going on here? Because it sounds like these are successful operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Dr. James.
I believe that the reference is being made to not an Aurora College program, but in the DLO and in the Yellowknives Indian First Nation, they have a program called almost like the Chinta, but it's a very successful program that's being offered by the band and not necessarily the Aurora College programming.
Thank you, Dr.
So I think those are the items to which you're referring to.
Thank you. Mr. Testart.
So you could confirm that Aurora College has not supported any of those programs?
Dr. James. Dr. James?
I'm not fully familiar with the program with the Yellowknives Indian First Nation, but a lot of the items that you put forward have been with that program, and they're running successfully. And that I believe that they also received 14 million in federal funding to run that program as well.
Thank you, Dr. James. Mr. Testart.
So but no staff persons, no CLC facilities or resources have been used to support those programs. That's what I'm getting at, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Dr. James.
One CLC adult educator, and they work together, which is good. They collaborate, which is important.
Thank you, Dr. James. Mr. Testart.
So with your plan, so with the plan for moving the staff potentially into the GNWT or doing something else, what happens to those programs? Because even if you're not funding it, if they're being provided through an Aurora College instructor and they're no longer able to provide them in person or through their expertise, what's going to happen to those programs? What's the plan for that? I mean, I'm not saying you need to continue operating if you're making these changes, but someone has to. So this could be also a question for the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. Dr. James.
So the continuation of programs, whether they be upgrading or trades or various certificates and diplomas, they'll continue to operate at Aurora College. And the plan is that for the adult upgrading is that it'll be, of course, as I said, in person at the 3 campuses as well as online to the 33 communities. And so those programs will continue. But just a little bit of a historical look at it is that over the past 10 to 15 years at Aurora College, there's been many different programs that have been tried in order to revive and rejuvenate and increase enrollment. especially if there was third-party funding that came in that allowed for training allowances. But if, as soon as the training allowances were taken, the same meta story for the CLCs continued, is that there was decrease in enrollment, decrease in interest, and the enrollment continued to fall. Cost increased, and of course, each CLC continued on that same trajectory, hoping for different results, but it didn't happen. There are pockets of success of programs that have been working in the last 25 years, but on the whole, in the last 10, 15 years, this is an ongoing trend for the CLCs, is the enrollment decreasing and the costs increasing, which are unsustainable for the Aurora College. Cannot operate such a system and continue to use public monies in a respectful and good manner.
Thank you, Dr. James. Next, I have Mr. Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my first question is for the Minister of ECE. So it was noted during the presentation that one of the reasons CLC closures had to be looked at was fiscal responsibility policy and funding cuts. So to the point, why is funding to the college and to post-secondary being cut when our priority is growing the northern workforce? I think cutting post-secondary funding communicates a direct contradiction with our approved mandate for this department and further highlights our inability to effectively action our priorities by applying cuts across the board instead of strategically. So I can't understand why we're cutting funding to post-secondary when we're trying to grow the northern workforce, knowing that post-secondary is the path to growing the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Is the questions for Minister Cleveland?
Thank you so much. So last April, when we as Cabinet undertook the fiscal sustainability exercise, we went to our departments and to the agencies that we work with and our arm's length institutions. And basically what we asked for was any areas where it made sense to explore potential cuts. And so, you know, for example, within departments, we looked at areas where we had undersubscribed funds. And so where funding often lapsed, and looked at, okay, well, let's trim. There was literally buckets of dollars where we trimmed the top off that routinely lapsed. I also, as Minister of Education, went to education bodies and said to them, listen, I am committed to, you know, not cutting dollars from our JK to 12, but do you guys have suggestions in areas from your budgets that you could see cut? Their response to me was absolutely, do not cut any of our funds. But here's a list of suggestions of what we think is not useful spend of money within the Department of Education, which was great. We were able to go back and look at those funds and react to those appropriately. Did the same thing with Aurora College, and I think it's fair to say it was a previous president. Went back and said, you know, where are you able to cut? Are you able to participate in this exercise? Aurora College came back to us with a list and a number. And we as Cabinet did not touch that number. We brought it forward and put it forward as their contribution to fiscal sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Mr. Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But to the point, I mean, the point is that Aurora College and various education bodies were asked to cut, as opposed to Cabinet taking a strategic look at all the different things that we're doing across the government. What are priority areas, what are not, and what is our plan to get movement on our priority areas, one of them being growing the northern workforce. So I don't hear the minister saying that we approach the college saying, we need to grow the northern workforce. What are you going to need in order to help us do that? What are some goals that we can set for the northern workforce, and how can we achieve those goals? It's more just, we're doing fiscal responsibility, can anybody contribute to that? And we went to everybody, as opposed to strategically implementing that in such a way that we are not inadvertently chipping away at our own priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, even if a department is directly related to a priority item, it doesn't mean that every dollar they spend is being spent responsibly or how we want it spent as an assembly. And so figuring out, for example, where dollars aren't being spent and are lapsing, and then therefore potentially going into a funding mechanism that isn't supported by this assembly, Well, that means that we are removing those dollars from that budget item, and then they are showing up in budget items that are appropriated by the Legislative Assembly, which means we do have direct eye on it, and we do have a heck of a lot more control over it. And so I would say in contravention to that, this directly speaks to ensuring that we are spending dollars as an assembly in a manner that respects our priorities, rather than having, for example, transitioning how we're spending dollars to ensure that it does accommodate what the priorities of this assembly are. And it was not an exercise of we're doing fiscal responsibility, give us your number. It was what makes sense. What makes sense for how we can ensure that we are spending responsibly. There are areas from, for example, the education budget, where we were spending dollars to bring classroom assistants into Yellowknife every year for training. And when we went and actually spoke with education bodies, it turned out that was incredibly disruptive to the children in the classroom, that those classroom assistants were there to support, because all of a sudden they were gone for a week at a time. So transitioning to virtual learning for those classroom assistants actually supported the overall goal and the overall priority of this assembly, and also managed to save us dollars. So it was mechanisms like that that we were really able to uncover by having these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Next I have Ms. Waylon Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. James, for being here. I knew her as Angela, just Angela, but now she's got this fancy title, but it's good to see, it's good to have you guys here with us. But I just wanted to say that I am very surprised with the board chair response. The world is going digital. If you were born and raised in small communities, you know there's a lot of challenges. You know, I'm not too sure where you're from, but then us here living in the Northwest Territories, we were born and raised in small communities. Many of us are, and there's a lot of technology. There's a lot of challenges, especially with technology. You know, the internet services are not good, and some of the communities just only like recently got their telephone services, and still a lot of communities don't have cell services. And we're still fighting here. My colleague was talking about highway from Fort Providence to on Highway 3. We still don't have cell services. So there's a lot of challenges. You know, like Starlink, yes, it made it possible, but with what's going on in the South, in the States, like I'm not a big fan of that technology going into small communities as well. You know, like, I mean, I don't support that right now, but that made it possible to improve our technology, services, just like what Premier said. But so with that in mind, and both of you are educators, you're, you know, like, I know that both of you have education background. Not much have changed. We know that with the education outcome, just like my colleague have said from Mackenzie Delta, the education outcome is still the same. It's not, hasn't changed much. You know, when our students graduate from high school, it hasn't changed much in a way where, you know, like students, you know, I mean, there's false hope given to our students leaving high school. We've seen it many times in our region too as well. You know, for that reason, many of our people are leaving, our young families are leaving our communities to go to larger regional center where there's better education outcome. I mean, it shouldn't be happening. We should be having the same education outcome the larger regional center have. Like, for example, Yellowknife, Fort Smith, Hay River, Inuvik, you know, and we don't have that luxury. So, and then there was a report that went out back in 2021, education, leave no students behind report, annual report or something like that. So since that time, I just wanted to ask the education. I know that, you know, like, I mean, I don't want to I'll leave that question for now. Okay, so that came out in 2021, Leave No Child Behind, or No Students Behind. We know that not much has changed. If you guys have the report, because I know both of you are educators, so you should know, you know what's going on. You know the quality of education that our young people are receiving in small communities. And that, and I know that a lot of the students, when that access program, there was a business access, there was teacher education access, there was social work access, there was renewable resources access, all kinds of access program that Aurora College was offering. So many of our students, after they graduated from high school, they went from one access program to another. In the process, they use up their SFA. But now, I'm glad that, previous minister changed that status, especially for the Indigenous students. It's unlimited. So, that's a good thing. But for improving education outcome in small communities, I don't think there's a lot of focus on that. I haven't heard much, but I know. Well, I have a grandson that's in school, so it's an opportunity for me to keep track of the education that he is receiving right now. He is only in grade 1, but that's the foundation. That's the foundation up to grade 4. We know that. Well, with that in mind, I don't want to, I would like to say more, but I don't want them to take up my time of answering the question, knowing Minister Cleveland, she'll talk forever. And then, but so we know that the CLC Learning Center is very important in many of the small communities because, some of the students will go there. Some of the students will go somewhere else, but we have no control over that. But if there was more community-based program being offered in small communities, that learning center will be utilized. And we've been asking about that. Even Klitschko have been asking about that. Yes, we had teacher education program there before, or it was offered through it was offered by Aurora College. It was being offered the program was based in Chief Jimmy Drill School. And personal support workers, same thing, that was a success program. Those were, an Aboriginal teacher language program was also offered through there too as well. And that, but for 4th year, we know that they had no choice, but they had to move on. They got to go to Fort Smith or go to Southern Institution because Aurora College was affiliated with University of Saskatchewan, and I know there's some affiliation with Southern Institution. So why, with the government, if they're gonna, they just don't abruptly close, they gradually. But with Aurora College, it just, like my colleague said, we heard it from the cabin radio, it should have been done gradually, but we had success with teacher education program and personal support worker program being offered in my community was a success. Why shut down, and instead of shutting it down, bring more. We've been asking for more community-based program to be delivered in small communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen Armstrong. Mr. Handley, and note that we are getting a little tight on time.
Thank you. In answer to your first question, I'm from northern Saskatchewan. I was born outside in the bush near a small community. I came here in '85. Long time before you were around.
No, you weren't.
So I grew up there was no such thing as telephones or anything like that. Today we have internet in every community. And I could go on name cell phones and everything else. The world has changed. And we want to keep up with it. And we want our small communities to be able to thrive in that kind of environment because it's coming. sort of lost the balance of your questions, but I don't think this is going to disadvantage the small communities. I think we can work with them, both in equipment and in technology and consultation to do that. We've had strategic planning meetings throughout the north, as I mentioned earlier, a very poor attendance. And maybe people just were going along with the old things, but I don't think we want to keep bricks and mortar as being our main way of delivering education, sole way. I think it has a place somewhere, and we'll work that all out, but right now we want to focus on getting opportunity to everybody. I see there's nobody in Betchaco, nobody in Wati, and so on, taking classes through the CLCs. And we think we can jump ahead to the modern age with a new approach, and are confident that it will succeed.
Thank you. Dr. James, briefly.
Back to her.
Very briefly.
Okay. Yeah, well, with all the social issues, you know that stats and everything of where some of our young people are coming from. A lot of our young people are hands-on learners, visual learners. They need that teaching, like hands-on. Some of them, they're going to lose their focus, because I know that there are some students that went to Fort Smith to take some courses. They were not told that this courses was going to be offered online. And some of them said, well, then why did we move here? We could have took this at home. Instead, they were already relocated to Fort Smith already, like they already settled, and their kids were in school. So a lot of those things, like if it was going to be happening, it would have been nice if there was a good communication happening with the students that are leaving. And it's really sad that what happened over there, we know that because a lot of our kids, they know who that person is that went missing, still missing. Because of that, I know there's a lot of hesitant. They're a little bit, they're not too comfortable going somewhere, especially now. And then with parents, with all the drugs that's happening, parents are scared, like to send their kids anywhere or to support them. But it's a choice, that these young people are making, and we have to respect that choice too as well.
Okay, you have to wrap up, Mr.
So so lots of hands-on. So some of this online, it's not going to work. Maybe it will work for somebody else, like like some of my colleagues here who are used to the online, like doing everything online. But there are, in small communities, there are not a lot of us that are into those technologies, and we're still a little bit behind, but there are hands-on. So how can we accommodate those young people? You can't accommodate them through all this technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. James.
We know that all people can learn, all children, all adult learners can learn, and they learn in different ways. Sometimes it's hands-on, sometimes it's visually, sometimes it's kinesthetic. But what we're seeing in our learner profile is that more and more students are choosing to come into the online world, to come into the digital world. And so essentially with the online paradigm is that we're moving away from that bricks and mortar approach. And then we're moving towards a more modernized approach of online learning that's available in all the 33 communities, not just 19, but 33. And so essentially with that, we have really exciting news about that CANNOR application that's going into the federal government for the early learning and childcare program to be offered online through distance education, which will make the beginning of our e-learning strategy, and we'll just get better and better at it. Already, as you know, and I shared, is that the personal support worker, the early learning childcare, the office and business administration programs are all online, and students are successful when they stay at home. They're close to things that are comfortable with them, and I've got all the communities and all the stats here that I can certainly share with the members after this presentation is over. But online learning for many of our students is working. And they're encountering a lot of success that moves not only from their online studies, but also into the workforce, into employment situations, which is a real good success story. Marcy.
Thank you. Okay, committee, I know there's likely a ton more questions out there, but unfortunately we've come to the end of our time this morning. I will ask Minister Cleveland and Chairperson Handley if they'd like to give closing comments before we end the live broadcast.
Do you want to do it? Okay, okay. I just want to say a huge thank you to committee for creating this space and this time for us to come and answer questions. I'm sure there are many more out there, and I'm sure people are eager to see how this rolls out. And I think that ensuring that we have open lines of communication and that information is easily accessible is going to be key to students feeling comfortable with these changes as they occur, and for communities being able to be champions in community-based education, whether it's online or through third-party delivery methods as well.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Mr. Handley.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee for meeting with us. I want to assure you that we're not on the other side somehow. We're working together with you, and we're doing the best we can to run a good college that's modern, that's effective, that's efficient. And we look forward to meeting again. Anytime the AOC wants to meet with us, please, we'll meet at your convenience. We'll to brief you. If any of you want to talk to us individually, we're there as well. But my main message is that we're working together on this, and we may be critical of each other. We heard some criticism today of our approach. Some people don't agree, but we have to move ahead. We'll never get programs that meet 100% of every student's need. There'll always be some who just don't quite fit in, but we're doing the best we can here. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you, and thank you again. Obviously, if there's any lessons we learned, it is that communication is key, whether it's good or bad information. We certainly appreciate that, being able to communicate. With that, again, I'd like to thank you all for coming today, thank the committee, and this will end the public portion of our broadcast today. Thank you.